Tuesday, May 25th, 2022, special council meeting. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please? Such that it is.
Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez. Councilmember Snedden. Here. Councilmember Friedman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon. Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez. Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
Mayor Rouse.
Here, thank you. And I do have an item to read.
We have one item to read. Fiscal year 2023 recommended operating and capital budget.
All right, very good. Mr. Director.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor, council members. I am proud to be here with representatives from Public Works Department to present you our fiscal year 23 budget. I know it's been a long couple of weeks for council, and we are happy to be the Lanterne Rouge for the budget presentation. First, our order of presentation here. I'll give you a quick department overview, and then through all my division managers, we'll go through admin, engineering, then streets and ops infrastructure, public works downtown team, facilities management, fleet management, and wrap up with water resources. Within each of those separate presentations, we'll discuss key initiatives, work efforts, touch on pandemic response and recovery, our proposed FY23 budget, and then proposed fee changes and other changes. Our department is comprised of 6 product lines and 1 support line. Of note, the one change that will be presented here in our budget today is that our 2 major internal service product lines, fleet management and facilities management, will be proposed to be a combined division for internal services. Right now, they are both being managed by Angela Oslin. She will present both divisions separately, but with the request that we go forward as a combined division. Our mission is to provide city infrastructure in the most efficient and sustainable way, in keeping with the values of the city's residents and our businesses. Pandemic resiliency efforts, as you know, Public Works never stopped providing our products and services throughout the pandemic. We continue to do that today, as a matter of fact, with the city's reaction to support our businesses on State Street and throughout the city. The department took on additional requirements to help support that without additional resources. One thing that Mr. Hagmark will address is we continue to do weekly COVID RNA testing at El Estero. And that's done in collaboration with the Cottage Health System and others. So we'll discuss that a little bit in future presentation here. What I'd like to do right now is just, you're going to hear a lot, and every bit of it, as you know, is important. But from a director's standpoint, I just wanted to give you my key takeaways and why they're really important up front. Right now, I think, which is true across the city and probably really across the country, we're experiencing a lot of personnel turnover and the impact that has on our organization. It takes 2 weeks to lose someone. It takes literally months to onboard a new candidate. And then with that requires that entire commitment to recruiting. It's so important, making the selection, and then the time to get the new person on board, oriented, and up to speed. That's a lot of staff time. Right now, we have as of Monday, we have 40.5 vacancies against 306 full-time FTEs. So that's pretty substantial. And as I note here on the slide, the area of highest concern is our mid and entry-level professionals, where we have 12 vacancies right now against about 104 positions. That works out to about 11.5%. About 4 to 5% is what's normally considered healthy. So it's almost twice that. And then as an example for the hourlies, and as you know, hourlies, we have a lot of people who are committed to being hourlies. Unfortunately, when we're having trouble recruiting there, the ones who are committed and willing to work, they come up against the 1,000-hour limitation. And as we get in the end of the fiscal year where we're at now, May, June, many of them are not eligible to work because they're at 990 hours. So we have to put them on the sidelines until July 1 where we can bring them back. We all know how important our ambassadors are to downtown. Right now, we have 13 vacancies amongst 18 positions. So that's a vacancy rate of 72%. That's the challenges we're working against. Next, not telling you anything you don't know here, but you will, as long as I'm here, I will continue to remind council this all the time. The commitment you made through Measure C to the pavement restoration program is enormous. And it is a long-term commitment. Our pavement condition index is in the low 60s right now. At one point, it was in the upper 50s, which is not good. We are moving in the right direction. I'll talk at the end when I talk about the capital improvements real quick about our level of commitment there. But it's so important that we stay the course here over the long term. We're investing at the right amount by all engineering standards, and we need to continue to do that for probably 20 years till we get to a point where our pavement condition index is low 70s to mid 70s. And at that point, we as a city will be able to lower our annual investment to a sustainable rate in perpetuity as long as we commit to it. Another big takeaway is the former Transportation Planning and Parking Division has been rebranded, if you will, to the Public Works Downtown Division. And downtown, I use that writ large. It's really within the whole city borders. And it doesn't look a lot different today than it did before the change was made, but it's positioned for the future. We have some major initiatives going on with taking a look at what the city's going to look like in the future. And this division specifically works with community development and economic development to ensure there's seamless continuity between where we're at today and where the city is going to in the future. So we've been tasked with being the lead division department for interim ops, and we want to make sure that those interim ops translate into whatever the future is going to look like with our master plan. And then the final is water resources, and I don't need to tell you how important water resources are, and a great testament to the council's commitment to our water resource program here. We're in a severe drought right now, and we're in very good position. We're in that position because we've made the commitment. So Mr. Hagmark will talk a lot more about that when he does his presentation. So at this point, if there's any questions you have up front, I would like to take them now. And then as we go through the presentation, I realize that many of you have a commitment at noon today. So my suggestion would be that you write your questions down as we go through each division, because we got a lot to go through, and then we'll take those at the end, making sure we get all our presentations done, and then take your questions before people have to depart for their commitment.
Thank you. I agree with that. I'm going to acknowledge that Councilmember Gutierrez is here, and also I'd like to have Ms. Harmon check in. She's there remotely.
Here, thank you.
Okay, and that's it. Very good. Proceed, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Last slide I have before I turn it over to our business manager, just a quick overview of the department. Like I said, we have 306 FTEs, run about 100 hourlies. Of course, we're down. We don't have that many on board right now. As we go through the presentation, you'll see that there's a net 5 FTE increase. What that works out to 6 additional FTEs, and then eliminating 1 of note. Those are all enterprise or reimbursable positions. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Mr. Pease, our business manager.
Thank you, Mr. Maurer. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, council members. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm going to give you an overview of our department revenues and expenditures. Our total revenues are $150 million proposed for fiscal year '23. Over 80% of that are in the enterprise and internal service funds, including our water, wastewater, downtown parking, facilities, and fleet operations. Looking at expenditures totaling $168 million, including the department's share of Measure C and general fund capital funds. Again, over 70% of the expenditure budget are in the enterprise and internal service operations. Looking at expenditures by category, nearly 60% of the department's budget is in capital infrastructure. In comparison, salary and benefits, another large expenditure, is only 30% of the department's expenditures. I will now walk through the administration division budget. Administration provides administrative and financial support to the department, including specialized support for water resources and engineering. The administration budget is a little under $1.5 million with 6 FTEs, and is largely charged with implementing citywide processes within Public Works, facilitating department standards, and coordinating and supporting a number of department activities. Of significance is the department's participation and coordination of the city's 5-year capital improvement program and administering the department's agenda process. For fiscal year '23, administration reduced operating costs, largely in our community outreach contract, which will be handled by in-house staff. And we reduced supplies and services, especially in our small contracts. This will be a reduced level of support for the department. Looking at the administration division's budget, this budget is largely status quo. The largest changes you see from the original plan are in our salary and benefits, which are routine changes due to turnover in our positions, and also some of the updates in our allocated costs. I will also note that this program is largely supported by general fund major tax revenue. With that, I'll turn it over to our engineering division.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. My name is Ashley Hsu. I'm the interim city engineer for the Public Works Department. And this morning I'll be providing an overview of the proposed budget for the engineering division. The engineering division is comprised of 2 programs, engineering services and land development engineering. Within engineering services, we have 4 sections, including water resources engineering, streets engineering, airport engineering, and our special projects and planning section. Included in land development engineering are development review, real property services, and construction inspection. In our division, we have just under 48 full-time equivalents. The larger the 2 programs is the engineering services program, with a proposed budget just under $7.5 million and just under 38.5 FTEs. This program provides professional engineering and management support for other city departments and divisions and all city capital projects to maintain and improve the city's infrastructure, which includes many grant-funded projects. The team is currently managing over $330 million in capital projects in various phases of planning, design, and construction. The team also provides grant application preparation and development support for the transportation planning and traffic engineering teams. And despite the numerous challenges that we've faced over the last couple of years from the pandemic, including supply chain issues, staffing issues, just to name a few, the team continues to deliver a high volume of significant community projects. And on the screen are a few examples, including the recently completed Las Positas and Modoc Road multi-use pathway project, and the safety upgrades at the Carrillo and San Andreas and San Pascual intersections. We also have a major pipeline project that's currently in construction with the Desal Link project, which is a major community project to connect the Desal plant to the Cater water treatment plant. The Land Development Engineering Program has a proposed budget just under $2 million with about 9.5 FTEs. And this team manages the public right-of-way, public works land and easements, and protects the interests of the general public while processing private development review, applications, and permits. The team manages the public works permit counter, and this year worked hard to reopen the counter to the public while maintaining online permitting services. This team supports a really wide range of projects, everything from redevelopment projects on State Street to assisting with residential sewer lateral repairs. And this year, the team completed community outreach and the public selection process for the city's next utility undergrounding project, which will be a continuation of undergrounding on Cliff Drive. For our revenues, we are proposing an increase in revenues associated with engineering work orders, and this is related to the addition of 3 new billable positions in the engineering services program. These positions are billable and are reimbursable by billing other departments and divisions for their work on capital projects. And 2 of the 3 positions are dedicated for water and wastewater capital support, which Mr. Hagmark will discuss in a bit more detail during his presentation. These revenues do assume full staffing levels, and in a moment, I'll talk about the engineering division's challenges that we're facing in terms of staffing. For land development fees and revenues, we are projecting a decrease in the next year, and this is related to current activity levels that we're seeing, as well as fee collection. And those have been reduced throughout the pandemic. And they do account for a 5% increase in our land development fees. To summarize our fees, we are proposing a 5% increase, and that matches and is in line with our increased cost of services that we're seeing, and is also consistent with the 5% increase proposed by the Community Development Department. We're also reenacting application and annual permitting fees for the use of the city sidewalk for outdoor dining purposes, and a note that this does not include the street right-of-way for parklet facilities. And we do have 1 new fee associated with the recent passage of Senate Bill 9. Looking at expenditures, there is an associated increase in salary and benefit expenditures for the 3 new billable positions I mentioned previously. Again, these expenses are offset by the revenue generated by these positions by billing capital projects. As I mentioned previously, the expenditures also assume full staffing levels, and the reality is we expect both expenditures and revenues to be lower than the proposed budget due to staff turnover and vacancies. The engineering division is certainly not alone, but we are experiencing a noticeable increase in staff turnover, particularly at our mid and entry-level professional positions. Also noted on this slide are some minor reductions in our discretionary spending for next year. Those reductions will have an impact on professional development and will require us to extend the lifespan of some of our current equipment. And to touch a bit more on the current challenges that we're facing in terms of staff retention, turnover, and hiring, The reality is that this is a major challenge for us in engineering, and we currently have about a 20% vacancy rate among our low to mid, or our entry to mid level engineering staff. And in addition to that, we have a number of hourly vacancies. And these hourlies, although they're part-time, provide really critical support for our project managers to allow our project managers to focus on the more complex issues related to capital project management. Our division's also been impacted by several interim or acting roles over the last year, and I'm an example of that, where I've been in my interim role for 6 months, which has meant that the team that I left has been trying to fill in for me with fewer people. And these current staffing trends mean that we just don't have enough staff to support our really strong capital programs across the city at the necessary level. So the tangible impacts of that are reduced engineering work order revenues, delays in capital project delivery, and having to make really conscious decisions about projects that may need to be put on hold. It also means decreased productivity for the team due to the recruitment process and the time commitment that that requires, as well as onboarding and training staff and getting them up to speed. And it also limits our capacity to respond to urgent requests. And with that, I will turn it over to the Streets Operations and Infrastructure Management Division.
Okay, good morning, Mayor Rouse, council members. I'm Jim Dewey. I'm the Streets Operations and Infrastructure Manager. And so I'll be providing a brief overview of our budget. I did present a couple of weeks ago on the highlights of our pavement maintenance program and capital, so this presentation will be brief. Also, I wanted to thank council for showing up for our Public Works Day. That was really a great event, and I know that staff really appreciated that and the support that we get from you, so thank you. The Streets Operation and Infrastructure Division has 11 programs. It's funded with 3 different funds. We have 40 full-time employees. We're organized in 4 different sections. So we have a traffic engineering section that includes our traffic engineering group and our traffic signal maintenance group. We have a general maintenance group that handles all of our traffic markings and signs, and our storm drain maintenance group is also part of that. We have a paving and concrete group that handles all of the paving efforts under roadway maintenance, and all the concrete improvements are handled under the sidewalk maintenance. And then we have right-of-way services too, which includes street sweeping and all of our on-demand services, which includes graffiti abatement. So our first section is our Transportation Administration section, and this provides for the budget management and the funding of all of our city's transportation programs. And so that includes all of the streets operations, the portion of the capital funding that we receive through Measure A and through our streets funds. It also funds capital programs or let's see, the transfers out to urban forestry also. So it provides for all the funding within our programs. So the roadway maintenance section includes the work of our production paving crew and our asphalt repair crew. We maintain over 245 miles of city streets. So this group does everything from fills the smallest potholes to repaving our largest streets. Right now they're down at Cabrillo Boulevard repaving there. So far this year we've repaved 88 city blocks with our city crews. Our sidewalk maintenance crew includes all of the work that is performed by our concrete repair crews. That includes maintaining over 286 miles of city sidewalks. So they do a lot of sidewalk replacement, curb replacement, maintenance of gutters and curbs. And they also provide for the sidewalk grinding and padding efforts to eliminate sidewalk uplifts and trip hazards. The storm drain maintenance and repair crew maintains 99 miles of storm drains. We also meet all the requirements of our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. But along with that, we maintain and operate the critical Laguna Channel and pump station. And this pump station is critical during times of heavy rains to keep the downtown area from flooding. The graffiti abatement group responds to more than 2,500 calls for graffiti abatement within 3 working days. And we also respond to other calls for public vandalism in the public right-of-way, and we ensure that private property graffiti is also addressed. The traffic markings and sign groups maintains over 20,000 traffic signals or traffic signs. We make sure that the signs are placed properly, that they're replaced when they're knocked down, that they maintain reflectivity, and they also manage all of the striping and markings and curb paving within the right-of-way. The traffic signal maintenance group maintains and repairs 144 signalized intersections, pedestrian flashers, and radar speed signs. And they also maintain all the computerized control equipment that is really fairly sophisticated today that controls and optimizes all of our traffic. This year, they also performed a lot of signal installations and did a lot of retrofits in order to improve accessibility that's incorporated into our signal systems. Traffic engineering, they basically touch everything in the public right-of-way. So they're optimizing, they're analyzing, they're making sure that traffic is flowing well, but also analyzing collision data to come up with systems and to design new systems to make our roadway systems safer in order to meet our Vision Zero requirements. In order to perform a lot of these capital improvements, they also apply for grants like the Highway Safety Improvement Program, and have brought in tens of millions of dollars to support that. So our Streets Capital Program provides for all of the maintenance and repair within our public right-of-way. When we speak of the Streets Capital within this program, we're talking about all the Streets Capital funding that's apart from Measure C. So this would be the only funding that we would have if we had not passed Measure C. So that includes the funding that comes from our utility users tax, our gas tax, and the half-cent sales tax that we get from Measure A. This program also provides for grant matches for all of our active transportation grants and provides for ongoing maintenance of bridges. So our street sweeping program provides 17,000 curb miles in both our commercial and residential corridors. We also fund the parking enforcement to support all of that and maintain all the signage related to that. So looking at our proposed revenues, this year we're looking a lot better than we anticipated. So we're going to be receiving about 1.6 million estimated increase over what we had originally planned, and this is really due to post-COVID demand for things like utility users tax, sales tax, and gas tax. Looking at our expenditures, we're expecting to spend about $1.9 million over what we had originally planned. Some of that's coming from salaries and benefit increase due to merit increases, other things like supplies and services, allocated costs, special projects, and some of the other line items are increased just from inflationary pressures. We are also contributing $670,000 more to our capital program, and this is directly the result of the SB1, the road maintenance and rehabilitation account funding that we need to put into a particular paving project every year. So that'll go right into our additional paving in our pavement maintenance program. This table shows our core funding for our streets capital, and as you can see, most of it is from Measure C, with the exception of the SB1 funding, which is about $2.1 million. So this is really what the level of funding that we need in order to continue trying to meet our goal of a 73 PCI pavement condition index. Looking at this table, this is the core funding for our pavement maintenance program. So we're looking to maintain levels of about $15.9 million in today's dollars ongoing year to year in order to meet our requirements. As Mr. Maurer said, that, you know, if we stay with this commitment, we're going to be able to complete things like our access ramps, so we won't need to reinvest in those. And our overall costs, once we've addressed deferred maintenance issues, are going to start rolling off. So it really behooves us to invest now, and then it pays off later. In terms of new positions, we have one new position, a traffic signal technician. Our traffic signal team maintains 117 signalized traffic signals. This is really well below, we've been operating below standard staffing levels for that level of signals, and this is really to remedy that issue. So these systems need to be maintained 24/7, and so this will allow us to stay on top of our maintenance and provide 24/7 coverage of these important systems. And with that, the next group that will come up will be our downtown division.
Good morning, Mayor Rouse and council members. I'm Jessica Grant, and I'm the interim Public Works Downtown Manager, here with Sarah Clark, who is our recently appointed Parking and Plaza Manager, to present the Public Works Downtown Division budget today. We have two work sections in our division: transportation planning and parking, and 9 work programs. For much of fiscal year 2022, we've had several acting appointments with staff serving in multiple capacities to keep our division running. These acting appointments are a result of staff retirements over the past 2 years. The biggest change to our division's workload was when State Street opened to an interim promenade in May of 2020. This caused not only a major increase in the division's workload, but caused many of our workload priorities to shift, with no increase in staff. Earlier this year, Council adopted the Economic Recovery Extension and Transition Ordinance, extending the interim State Street Promenade until December 2023. As directed by the council-adopted ordinance, we worked with businesses earlier this year to establish the 20-foot fire lane, and we continue to work with businesses on ADA compliance. Promenade maintenance is still ongoing. Ms. Clark will go more into the day-to-day operations momentarily when she discusses the downtown parking program and budget. We will be returning to council on June 28th with a presentation on the interim operations. Our division is also actively involved in the longer-term State Street master planning effort that will also be a major workload priority over the next 2 to 3 years. With that, I'll hand it over to Ms. Clark, and I will follow Ms. Clark on the transportation planning budget. Oh, you know what? I'll just do it. Yep. Okay.
Good morning, Mayor Rouse and council members. As has been the case for the past few years, we have a challenging budget ahead of us this year, but I'm going to start by talking about what we do here in downtown parking and some of our program highlights. So downtown parking has 6 programs in total. Our most visible responsibility, and the main thing that we're known for, is operating and maintaining 15 public parking lots in the downtown area. So that involves keeping them clean and safe, hiring the staff, training the staff, and supervising them as they run the lots and assist the hourly customers on entrance and exit. So far this year, we've processed 2.3 million hourly parking transactions. And we've seen some big changes in the downtown lots. We installed license plate recognition in all 12 of our hourly parking lots. And this has helped us facilitate self-serve hours during the off-peak times, which in turn helps keep our staffing costs down. And just a few weeks ago, we officially rolled out a new mobile payment option, which gives customers a new way to pay before exiting by scanning a QR code with their mobile phone. But we do a lot more than just the parking lots. We're also responsible for maintaining the downtown plaza area and the State Street Promenade. In addition to having our maintenance staff out there daily doing cleaning and repairs, we also oversee contractors who provide janitorial services, do power washing on the sidewalks, maintain the landscaping, and hang the flags each week. We also run the Downtown Ambassador Program. When we're fully staffed, we've got 18 ambassadors, but unfortunately, we've had to reduce that number significantly because of hiring challenges, the same sort of hiring challenges that the rest of the department is facing. So right now, we're down to only 6. Nonetheless, the ambassadors continue their daily walks, although we've had to scale back the number of shifts that we're able to staff. And they can respond quickly to nuisance calls and help identify maintenance issues as they rise. So despite being short-staffed, our ambassadors have still managed to make over 3,600 business contacts so far this year. They've also made almost 900 calls for cleaning and maintenance services, and they've issued over 4,400 verbal warnings for municipal code violations, so things like smoking, littering, lying on the sidewalk. And they continue to work closely with social services providers like CityNet and SB Act to help connect our homeless population to the services that they need. And then last but certainly not least, downtown parking also manages on-street parking citywide. That includes loading zones, accessible parking zones, and timed parking areas. We administer the resident permit parking program, the oversized vehicle permit program, the monthly and commuter permit programs, and the new electric vehicle charging permit program. We also run the Bike Spot secure bicycle parking facilities, which are located in the Granada Garage and at the MTD Transit Center. We're pleased to report that this past year, we've finished digitizing our permit applications, so these can now all be submitted online through the Seamless Docs app. So looking ahead to fiscal year 23, we're planning to resume essential capital spending, which was put almost entirely on hold during the pandemic for budgetary reasons, by completing 3 critical maintenance and repair projects, repairing damaged cable barriers, the Libera Garage roof deck, and the pavement in Lot 5, which you can see there in that photo. We're also going to be significantly expanding our plaza maintenance services by adding contractor support for janitorial service in the actual street and increasing the frequency of pressure washing. However, staffing, like I mentioned before, particularly hourly staffing, has been a big challenge for us this past year. Although hiring has picked up pretty significantly since we raised the starting wage in January, we do expect that we'll continue to have difficulty with staffing through the next year, which in turn limits our ability to collect revenue and provide ambassadors for State Street. So the Downtown Parking Fund was hit harder than any other city fund by the impacts of the COVID pandemic. When the virus hit, we had to shut down completely for several months, and our revenue went to 0. Since then, ongoing fluctuations in demand due to subsequent waves of the virus, along with the difficulty that we've had in staffing back up, have continued to set us back. So now we're at a place where most of the demand has recovered, especially on the weekends, but staffing is limiting the hours that we're actually able to collect revenue. So let's take a look at those revenues. In FY 2022, we continued to lag behind where we were prior to the pandemic. One bright spot was the Parking and Business Improvement Area Assessment, which we're projecting will come in ahead of budget for FY 22. In FY '23, we didn't propose any changes to the budgeted amount of $900,000. However, receipts for the first quarter of this calendar year were stronger than expected, so I'd actually estimate that in FY '23, we're likely to bring in closer to $1 million. And this is a good indicator of the strength of the recovery downtown, as a lot of that assessment is based on gross receipts for retail and restaurants. The big adjustment that you see here is for fees and service charges, because for the first time in 16 years, Downtown Parking is proposing to raise the hourly parking rate in our lots, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. So looking at expenditures, you'll see a big increase in salaries and benefits. As hiring picks up, we expect to be able to expand our hours of operation in the parking lots through a combination of staffed kiosks and automated self-service hours to bring our hours back into line with where we were prior to the pandemic, and then hopefully expand them even a bit further. So although this will increase our staffing costs, we do expect that those costs will be fully offset by the increased revenue that would bring in. We're proposing an increase in supplies and services as well. This will cover the cost of those expanded plaza maintenance services that we saw earlier, and you're also going to see an increase in capital spending. So as I did mention earlier, we are going to be resuming critical capital repairs this coming year, which will be funded through a combination of reserves and insurance reimbursements. However, this capital program is still significantly slimmed down over what we sort of have on the docket and the other things that we need to do to maintain our lots. We are proposing 2 fee changes for this coming year. First, we've got a 1.5% late fee to be applied to delinquent monthly and commuter permit accounts. And that's to recover the cost of staff time that's needed to chase down those payments and to hopefully encourage our customers to keep those accounts current. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we are proposing to raise our hourly rate from $1.50 up to $2.50 an hour, while still keeping that 75-minute complimentary period in place. So at this point, we are estimating that we've lost around $6.8 million in revenue over the past 2 years. The result of that is that we've had to use a large portion of our reserves to float our operations. And those reserves have been designated for a variety of capital projects, which all had to be put on hold. So looking ahead into fiscal year '23, absent significant additional revenue, we'd be looking at another large deficit, which would put our reserves well below policy level. So the blue line here shows the trend. If we fail to bring in new reserves next year, you can see we started off with a good cushion to fund our capital, and then when the pandemic hit, you see that take a dive. With the rate increase, which is shown by the orange line, we will be able to stabilize our reserves for at least the next year and avoid bottoming out the reserve fund entirely. If current trends in cost increases continue, we expect that we will require additional adjustments in future years, which the Downtown Parking Committee also recommended when they reviewed our budget. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Jessica Grant.
On behalf of the Transportation Planning section, I will review our work efforts, budget, and highlight some of our streets transportation capital projects. We have 3 programs: transportation planning, alternative transportation with the Easy Lift contract, and employee work trip. The largest part of our work effort is implementing the general plan circulation element, bicycle and pedestrian master plans, and Vision Zero strategy for both land development and capital projects. Our planning documents do have active transportation and safety infrastructure projects in them, and we are always actively seeking grant funding for those projects. New to our program is Bike Share. In January 2021, we launched the city's pilot Bike Share program with the help of our operator, B-Cycle. As of the end of April, here are the statistics. Since the start of the pilot, you will notice that there's been over 400,000 miles ridden on those e-bikes to date. Although we're only in year 1 of the 3-year pilot program, we are very pleased with the results so far. We also manage the contract with the recently merged Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition and the Coalition of Sustainable Transportation, also known as SB Bike and Coast, for the Safe Routes to School program. This past year, SB Bike and Coast facilitated more conversations with school principals and parent-teacher associations about barriers for walking and biking to and from school and how to address those barriers. They also coordinated helmet distributions, facilitated bike and walk to school days, and gave safety presentations teaching students about pedestrian and bicycle safety. And here's just a few images of some of those trainings. We also participate in regional planning efforts with a lot of recent focus on the Highway 101 HOV and widening project and mitigation projects that are indicated in the stars that you see on the right-hand image. SBCAG is actively seeking funding to fund the remaining freeway segments in the city and county to lessen traffic congestion from Santa Barbara to Ventura. We are also in the process of updating the city traffic model, which will help us address congestion management at a policy level and inform us on future capital infrastructure needs. For the Employee Work Trip Program, headed by Sam Fertner, we subsidize the operation of various transit assistance and transportation demand management programs. New this year, we offered subsidized bike share memberships to city employees for their commute to and from work. To date, we have around 65 employees taking advantage of this commute incentive. Through another work program, the city also provides access to vital transportation services in our community through the contract with EasyLift. And EasyLift is the nonprofit transportation agency for elderly and mobility impaired members through the community through a dial-a-ride paratransit service through the South County. They had an increase of ridership by about 32% over the past year. And of the 59,000 rides that they provided, 68% fell within the city of Santa Barbara. For the transportation budget, we saw an increase in plan check revenues in fiscal year 2022, and so we made the following $50,000 adjustment. All other revenues are status quo. The Measure A sales tax revenue for the EasyLift program is not reflected here, but it's reflected in the overall streets transportation budget. For the program expenditures, our special project budget was restored. The bulk of the special project monies do go to EasyLift, approximately $270,000. The remaining monies go to special projects for our Vision Zero program, community engagement on various work efforts, and other transportation-related consultant contracts. Transitioning to our Streets Transportation Grants Capital Program, we have about $49 million in awarded grant monies that have or will soon be appropriated. As Mr. Dewey discussed in his presentation, the bulk of our streets capital goes to pavement maintenance and maintaining what we have. So in order to have any active transportation or safety improvement, we depend heavily on grant opportunities, and we leverage the remaining funding in our streets capital for matching funds. So for example, the $49 million in grants awarded, we are leveraging about $3.3 million in match monies for fiscal year 2023. So now I'll go through and highlight a few of our active transportation projects. Currently in construction is the Eastside Community Paseos project with the route shown in light green. In dark green is the Westside Community Paseos project that's headed for construction late summer and fall of this year. And these active transportation projects not only provide strong connections within the east side and west side, but from those neighborhoods to downtown. And that was a really important community need documented in our bicycle master planning effort to have a strong east and west connection in our downtown area. Also under construction right now is the downtown De La Vina buffered bike lanes and safe crossings project that's shown in the purple dashes. The Vision Zero US 101 State Street Undercrossing project is also headed for construction in fiscal year 2023. The project reallocates space under the undercrossing to improve safety and appropriately rebalance space for vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists. This is just an illustration of what it will look like. And then this is just directly under the underpass. We're excited for this to come to construction soon. And then for the active transportation program that we've been successful in the past, earning approximately over $40 million in grant funds. This past cycle was the most competitive cycle to date. We were the only city in the county to receive monies, and the awarded project was the Upper De La Vina Street Gap Closure and Safe Crossings project. We were just off the mark for the Cliff Drive and West Side projects. There is going to be some augmented funds coming through the state, approximately $500 million. We don't know if it will go back to cycle 5 or go into cycle 6. There is a update, I believe, tomorrow, but we will not know the full fate until after we submit for cycle 6 applications. And again, we will be resubmitting for Cliff Drive and the West Side projects again, as well as a project on Milpas Street. And finally, we are going to be kicking off a planning effort for the pedestrian and bike bridge study in the vicinity of Mission Canyon Bridge. That effort will kick off in August. All of these projects are really a great combined effort with our transportation planning team, streets engineering, and traffic engineering. We have a great synergy going, and really happy to be part of these great community projects. With that, I'd like to hand it off to the facilities management team. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor Rouse, members of the council. My name is Angela Osland. I'm the facilities manager for Public Works, and I'm the fleet manager as well. As Director Moore talked about earlier, we will be proposing putting together both the fleet and facilities divisions into one area, in which I will be the manager for that. I will be presenting a largely status quo budget today, other than for some capital items. The facilities management division is comprised of 37.8 FTEs and 6 program areas. The building maintenance program area is comprised of 17.8 FTEs, and we're requesting a budget of $3.8 million. The type of work that building maintenance does includes repairing windows, roofs, and so on and so forth, plumbing. Some of the program highlights that we were able to accomplish this year includes the HR annex remodel to the IT training room, updating the Pershing Park tennis court lights with LED, building repairs at the Harbor Patrol building, at the Harbor Patrol boat, and fabricating and constructing new iron fencing for the carousel. And again, we do quite a bit of work in the downtown corridor with our streetlights and replacing streetlight knockdowns. Our electronic maintenance program is comprised of 6.5 FTEs with a requested budget of $1.4 million. The type of work we typically do includes maintaining and repairing the infrastructure to support our phones, our telephone systems, our microwaves, and our radios. Some of our program highlights for this year include installing new security cameras at our East Side Library and at Fire Station 4, and of course, replacing and repairing critical links and systems on multiple areas. Additionally, we assisted with the project to remove, shorten, and reinstall the AM antenna over at the city annex yard, and this supports our public AM radio. And then we launched our citywide NEC voicemail system, which includes over 1,200 mailboxes, so these are users, and over 400 auto attendants that support our various programs, including the library and park and recreation department. Our custodial services program is comprised of 12.5 FTEs with a $1.9 million budget. Typical work that we do includes cleaning, vacuuming, and so on and so forth. But the other program highlights that I want to show here include our pandemic response, and these are for things including ordinary sanitizing, as well as exposure cleaning for emergencies that I know we've experienced quite a bit throughout this year. We've also performed a number of shift changes to improve our customer service, improved our inspection regime, including our quality control, and are continuing to build our green cleaning program. Facilities also oversees the environmental compliance program. This is 1 FTE and $510,000 for this coming year. The type of work we do includes responding to bee and hive complaints, hazardous material cleanups within the right-of-way. This includes blood spill cleanups, vomit cleanups, and so on. We perform vector control within our right-of-way, and we also oversee special projects, including the police department vapor extraction project, which we hope is going to be completed here this coming fall. Casa de la Raza left removal remedial action project was also completed and closed this year, and the Chase Palm Park Soils and Groundwater Management Plan supporting Parks and Recreation was sent to the county. This is our facilities capital project request list. We're requesting $190,000 in our capital budget, $350,000 in our general fund budget, and $1.485 million in our Measure C budget. Our program highlights, as you know, include the design and construction management of the Central Library Plaza. We're very excited that this is going to be beginning very soon. We're also overseeing the historic Carrillo Gym building design and have completed phase 1 of the Louise Lowry Davis Center construction, and also completed some of these other emergency projects. In the future, you'll see some of the results of the ongoing management of the corporate yard facilities master plan for the Laguna and Ortega yards. This is a list of our facilities capital projects this year. These are things like our ordinary lateral repairs, building security upgrades, HVAC maintenance and repair, and ADA transition plan. This year, we reduced our facilities capital by $280,000, so we are proposing a $260,000 increase in Measure C for minor renewal of our facilities. Some of the projects that we're planning and had planned for this coming FY23 year include work at City Hall, additional work at the corporate yard, work at the Fire Station 6 building for minor renewal, and then Los Baños building minor renewals. This is a slide that we presented to you last March regarding the Central Library construction project. And the projects that you see here were reappropriated in order to fund that project. We're proposing funding these projects in the FY23 program. And Director Moore will talk about this a little bit more later. This slide shows our proposed revenue and expenditures. And the main change for our revenue is a reduction in billables. Basically what that means is we, in facilities, perform work for other entities, but due to COVID and with buildings being either closed or a number of telecommuters, that billable revenue has decreased. And we expect that to stay that way in '23. Regarding our expenditures, this is salary and benefits increases, particularly in merits, and then also our updated allocated costs. So again, with the merger of fleet and facilities divisions, the position reclassifications that we're proposing include the facilities manager being removed from the organizational chart, and we'll move that to a shared facilities and fleet division manager. This is a net of half of an FTE savings to the program. And then reclassifying our supervising engineer to our facility superintendent, and reclassifying our accounting assistant to our administrative assistant. The service level impacts, and I'll go over these for facilities, and they're relatively the same for fleet, but with the merger of the fleet and facilities division manager, there's going to be a significant workload that needs to be redelegated and absorbed. And so we'll see some loss of support to complete some major work efforts. We'll see some delays in special projects and some reduction in customer service to other departments. And again, as you've heard earlier in our other areas, we are experiencing supply chain issues. The cost of doing business is going up, labor is going up, and the age of our equipment is also going up. And so those are a number of impacts that affect our program areas. And as I talked about earlier, this is one of our program highlights. A number of our program areas work together to complete this training renovation, including electronic maintenance, building maintenance, and then capital projects oversaw some contract. This is a picture of our reserve summary. And as you can see, the trend is going down. We are using our reserves. With a request of $260,000 in facilities maintenance, we'll be able to stay above our projected reserves. If not, we would be at or below our policy reserves. Our 5-year plan includes completing the internal city services study. This is a study that is going to, and is starting now, and to review the programs for both fleet and facilities. They're going to be looking over all of the operational areas, looking for efficiencies, and then providing recommendations on the operations and the financials for both fleet and facilities. The other thing that will be on the horizon, we'll come back and talk with you at a later date, is the city radio upgrade project. And this is for the public safety radio communication system and is currently unfunded. We currently estimate the design to be $2 million and the construction to be $10 million. But again, the economy is changing. This supports all of our fire and our police department communications. And with that, I'll move on to fleet management. The Fleet Management Division is comprised of 15 FTEs, 2 funds, and 2 program areas. And I just want to note there's only 1 supervisor within this program area. The Fleet Maintenance Program is comprised of 13.2 FTEs with a budget of $3.3 million. We oversee the maintenance and repair of all of our city's vehicles and our city's backup generators. We maintain 486 pieces of equipment within the city. We manage 25 pool vehicles in the pool vehicle program. We manage and maintain 5 city fueling stations. We are currently working on developing the Green Fleet Roadmap for all of our EV and alternative fuel vehicles. And we oversee the environmental compliance for smog testing, APCD reporting, and fueling station compliance. Our Fleet Replacement Fund is comprised of 1.8 FTEs with a budget of $1.8 million. And this fund is really for the replacement of all of our equipment and our fleet vehicles, fire trucks, service trucks, pool vehicles, and so on. This year, one of our major program highlights was to move ahead a lease purchase pilot for 4 of our fire apparatus. We are able to order 3 Type 1s and 1 aerial ladder truck that desperately need to be replaced. We also were able to purchase our first fully electric police response vehicle, which is a Mustang Mach-E. We built and activated 4 new police hybrid interceptors, and we moved all of our pool vehicles to 100% alternative fuel. This is our Fleet Management Division proposed revenue. This includes both of our maintenance program and our replacement program. And the major adjustment you'll see here is the fire truck lease allocations. This is our expenditures for both the maintenance and the replacement programs. And again, the major adjustments you see are for the fire truck lease payments, and then also the salary benefits increases and updated allocated costs. And pulling this apart again, just taking a closer look, this is our fleet replacement. So this is what we utilize to replace our vehicles in FY23, and it's looking at $1.576 million. Again, the major adjustment is just showing where that capital lease payment is coming from. So again, with the merger of the Fleet and Facilities divisions, we'll be merging the Fleet Manager to the Shared Fleet and Facilities Division Manager. We will be reclassifying the Fleet Supervisor to a Fleet Superintendent, reclassifying an Administrative Assistant to Administrative Analyst 1-2, and reclassifying an Administrative Specialist to an Accounting Assistant. The service level impacts I covered already with the Facilities Division, and these are largely the same, though I will point out that we are deferring vehicle replacements due to unavailability of the electrical vehicle technology, but once that technology really starts to move forward again, we'll be utilizing that as part of our replacement program. Some of Fleet's highlights for this year included being named number 10 in leading fleet in the nation. We were able to purchase and activate 2 hybrid Ford F-150s into service. We have 2 fully electric Ford F-150 service trucks that are on order. We've been partnering with the Energy and Climate Division on the Green Fleet Roadmap and moving forward to develop policies on green fleet purchasing. And of course, creating our training videos for radio use and for brake inspections for our customers. Other highlights again include partnering with Fire Department for this lease purchase pilot program, performing staff development support, which includes sending 4 of our technicians to the Fire Mechanics Academy this year. And we have 2 new technicians this year who've completed a number of ASE certifications. And then again, our internal city services study is ongoing, and out of that study will come recommendations on fee structures, reserve balances, and provide better financial transparency for these programs. This is a snapshot of our fleet maintenance reserve summary. We have been using our fleet maintenance reserves. Our 5-year plan for this, again, is to support the recommendations of the internal city services study, as well as replace a number of our vehicle lifts, which are aged and really need to be replaced, replacing our bay doors, installing a new heating system loop, installing new EV charging stations to support the city's fleet for EV, and then also purchasing EV maintenance equipment so that our technicians can begin servicing these vehicles. And this is a picture of our fleet replacement reserve summary. Our projection is going up some because we had a number of replacements in FY22. But again, this is our replacement fund, and it supports all of the replacement of the vehicles and the emergency generators in the city. And with that, I will turn it over to Water Resources. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor Rouse, council members. Joshua Hagmark, Water Resources Manager, here to walk you through the Water Resources budget for this next year. Outlined today, we're going to go over the wastewater fund, then the water fund, and then we're going to look at Water Resources staffing, fees, and rate changes for this year. Water Resources is made up of 17 programs, 4 funds, and just shy of 129 employees. Helping me to deliver that program is broken up over Matt Ward, Kathy Taylor, and Amanda Flessy, overseeing wastewater, water supply, and the water system. I'm going to start with wastewater here. $27 million program, just over 51 employees. Again, the goal of this whole program is protection of public health and the environment through fiscally responsible practices. This includes wastewater collection and conveyance, wastewater treatment, and in our sewer lateral inspection program. Of note in this year's budget, there is an increase in service charges. This is what we collect for providing wastewater service. We had been planning for a 5% increase, and because of drivers, which I will get into, we're looking at needing to do a 7% increase, so that adjustment there is recognizing a 2% increase. And then I also wanted to point out under supplies and services, a significant increase this year in chemicals and electricity, 73% jump in chemical costs and a 25% jump in electrical costs. Jumping into our capital fund, we'll note an $800,000 increase in our Elistero equipment rehabilitation. That is related to our chlorine contact chamber, which is a single source of failure. This is a key facility that allows us to chlorinate and dechlorinate our wastewater, and the scope of that work is increased along with inflation for that project. Under lift station maintenance, this goes back to Ms. Shu's comments about engineering. We just do not have the engineering staff to deliver some of these projects, and so we are deferring this, returning this to reserves for now, but this work needs to get done. We do have lift stations in need of maintenance. And then the sanitary sewer overflow, I want to make sure it's very clear we continue to commit these resources to maintenance of our collection system. The challenge we're having is our collection staff has really been hit hard as well by the current staffing situation, and we're unable to stay staffed in that group. And so we are looking to leverage more on-call sewer cleaning services. So we're taking $700,000 out of capital and putting it into operating to be able to keep up with that maintenance work. Wastewater reserves look good, and a result of not being able to get to some of that large capital work, we do anticipate we will be drawing those funds down as engineering staffing hopefully improves. Highlights, as I noted already, recruitment and retention has hit water resources hard, and there's a lot of work that has had to been delayed, and it's left a lot of work on the few, which it means added stress on the organization. So really mindful of that, and the council's been hearing that over and over again. As we gear up, and that just leads us into our next challenge, or lead up to two major projects we've been working on for years now. Raymar Lift Station Rehab, which is a $7 million project. We hope to wrap up design this year and get into construction, and that will be SRF funding. And then the Ellisdale Electrical Renewal Project, major overhaul of the electrical for that facility, a $30 million project. We hope to also get into construction this fiscal year. And then to end on a highlight, the protection of public health, taking it to a new level with our wastewater sampling. We see the COVID RNA sampling as just the beginning of a way in which we can continue our mission of protecting public health and the environment. And in this case, we've been taking weekly monitoring for COVID RNA in our wastewater and sharing that with our public health leaders. And again, this is a start. How this correlates to how the pandemic is actually impacting our community, I think is going to be something that will be unfolding in the next few years. But we do see this as a potential to identify other public health issues. And so we're excited to work in that area, and I know the team is excited to be part of that. Moving on into water operating, again, a significant budget here, just under 70 million and just under 78 employees. Our focus here is maintaining public trust and high regard by delivering safe and reliable drinking water through fiscally responsible practices. Highlights here, we're all over water supply. We'll be talking more with you on June 21st when we come back to talk about the drought status. Water distribution, water treatment, and our water quality laboratory. Of note here, from going from 22 to 23, we were able to secure a grant for the desal pump station of 1.5 million, so that shows up there. And then under intergovernmental, we're now moving into the first full year of our agreement with Montecito. They are paying us approximately $5.3 million for their participation in that long-term water supply agreement. So this will bring us up. This also reflects a little bit of the agreement now with La Cumbre Mutual Water Company and selling them some recycled water. Under allocated costs, you've probably heard this, water resources hit pretty hard. We got a $500,000 hit for the self-insurance fund. And then under supplies and services, again, similar theme here, chemicals and electricity costs skyrocketing. And then under special projects, drought expenses kicking up. The COMB board just recently took action to move forward with the secured pipeline, and that will be coming back to the council for ratification. And then we've got lots of capital work going on here. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Again, hitting on this point, we are deferring a work on Vic Trace Reservoir. We just do not have the engineering staff to move that forward. So we are reducing that budget and moving that $5 million back to reserves, but that work needs to happen. Recycle water plant, we do have an opportunity right now. We've been trying to get the maximum life out of that membranes, but those membranes are getting down to the nub, and so we are planning this next year to go ahead and move forward with replacement of those membranes. Water fund reserves look healthy. The combination of not being able to do some key capital work because we don't have the staffing resources and receiving that $10 million grant this year for offsetting desal costs have put the fund in good shape, but we do have plans to draw that down, and we will be working with finance to make sure we are taking a look at the highest priorities for use of that funding. Highlights, The advanced metering infrastructure, you probably haven't heard much about that in a while, but the pilot has been going well, and we anticipate by the end of this calendar year, we'll start moving forward with the full-scale deployment, which is really exciting. Water supply planning, you'll hear more and more of this in June, but we are ramping up the messaging. We have been successful at purchasing some water, and we are continuing to work with our neighbors and partners. Capital improvements, you heard a little bit about the Desal Link project. We're hoping to wrap that project up by the end of this calendar year, and we're hoping to finalize design of the Cater Finished Water Resiliency Project, which is another regional project to improve Cater's role here in the community. Water main breaks. Ending on a positive note here, we did ramp up spending. The council initiated a 2% replacement program in 2017, and we're starting to see some fruits from that. And again, it's early. We anticipate needing to spend this for probably the next 15 to 20 years, but this is the first time in decades we've actually seen this trend start to head the right way. We're still having, in my mind, too many main breaks, but at least we're going in the right direction, and I'd be happy to report back to Water Commission and Council as the years go by on this issue. With that, we're going to talk a little about staffing. We are proposing to reclassify a position to a principal project manager. Again, we just have so many high-profile projects that need more support, and that will be split between water and wastewater. We are recommending a new lab analyst. The state has been busy cranking out new regulations for lab sampling, and we are in desperate need of additional resources to manage that. And then we are proposing a water treatment superintendent to really for oversight of the Charles E. Meyer desalination plant. It's taking far more time than we initially anticipated, and we believe this is the right step to stay on top of that. As far as fees, and again, these are fees for moving a service, getting a meter, renting a meter for a fire hydrant. We're proposing a 5% increase. No new fees, but just a 5% increase across the board. Wastewater, same thing. The only little nuance there is with the slip fees, we do go out and bid certain work and have contractors do that, so it's just a pass-through on that, and that's somewhere between 10 and 15% depending on what the service was. And then capacity charges, we'll be talking more about this in June, but recommending a 7.2% increase to our water capacity. That's the buy-in fee that a new customer would pay, or someone increasing their service. And then wastewater, we're recommending a decrease of 3.6%. Water rates, we are in year 2 of a 3-year rate plan, and we are recommending a 5% rate increase, which we still believe is appropriate for inflation and ongoing maintenance costs. Again, we're transitioning to a higher level of capital investment, as I've already discussed. As far as the city's water service costs, this would be for a typical customer with a 5/8 meter. This is how our rates customers stack up. So for a low water user, the city offers the cheapest water on the South Coast. For a moderate user, we're right in the pack. And subsequently, for a high user, we have some of the highest water uses on the South Coast. As far as wastewater rates, we are just worked with a consultant to analyze rates for FY23 from 25. They are recommending a 7% rate revenue increase for FY23. Baked into that 7% is about a 3% for inflation, 2% for the need for increased capital investments. 1%, this came out of conversations with the Water Commission for drought impacts, because as people use less water, that impacts our wastewater revenues as well. And then 1% for debt service and reserves that will be impacted as well. We do have a public rate hearing scheduled for June 14th. And then here's how our wastewater services compares to our neighbors. I feel like we're right in the pack with our neighboring agencies. And again, we're comparing our proposed to their current rates, and they're all also going through rate increases as well. And then my final slide here is just a comparison of the full utility bill, which includes solid waste and UUT, and the overall bill is going up by about 4.8% from FY22 to FY23. And with that, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Oh, I'll turn that over to Mr. Mauer to finish the presentation.
Oops, let me turn this on. That really concludes the Public Works specific portion of our presentation this morning, and this final section is citywide, but Public Works is the largest contributor or user of the general fund and Measure C capital. That's why I get nominated to do it. I am, with just a couple exceptions, not going to get into any specifics. You should have heard all these major capital projects or expenditures from the previous department briefs or my Public Works Division briefs that you just heard. You can see we're probably out of the pandemic austerity, about going up to a combined general fund and Measure C request for FY23 of $29 million shows about a 16% increase from 22. I just want to spend just a minute on this slide. The two areas that I want to address specifically, facilities and then streets. And I mentioned before about, you always hear from me the need for the commitment of Measure C to both of these areas, our largest assets within the city. An example for facilities, if you combine the facilities within Public Works and then Parks and Rec, which is represented here, it's about $6.7 million that we're making a commitment to this year. That's against a plant replacement value of, we don't have real exact numbers, and this is something we'll work on over time to refine those, but of about $250 million. I think that's significantly low. It's probably north of 300 million. But even using the 250 million number, that's showing asset investment of 2.7%. That's substantially below where the general accepted level of 4.5% to 5.5% would be for standard assets, and that's what I would say. We don't own unique, we don't have nuclear facilities or things like that. So for standard assets, about 4.5% to 5% is, once you get your program working right, that's where you want to be. Now, go down to streets. As in my introductory remarks, I talked about we are where we need to be. The $19.4 million investment is against a $345 million plant replacement value for streets. That represents about an 8.4%. And we need to be above that 5% investment for probably the next 15 to 20 years to get our pavement condition index to about 73 plus or minus, and then we can drop down to that 5% and keep that forever. But that is that's good fiscal management, and it'll protect the city and obviously serve the citizens and the business as well. An example of the challenge we have here, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, Ms. Osland mentioned in her brief about the Carrillo Gym project. Now, I think when most people hear a gym project, they think, oh, new gym. No, this is a new gym. There's no improvement at all in services, recreational services at that facility. This project is structural and seismic repairs and building envelope repairs to a historic building, which are very expensive just to keep it operational as it is today. In the capital program, and I understand you know this, but just it's more than construction projects. An example, I just put one example in, is the IT, constituent relationship and infrastructure upgrades. Excella is our permitting, plan review, licensing software the city uses. OnBase, I think you're all familiar with, is our document workflow software, and Cartograph is part of our construction or computer maintenance management system, or CMMS system, that's used primarily by Public Works. On the general fund side, just to highlight an example, it's a relatively small investment in capital improvements, $1 million for this year. And where it makes a huge impact are ADA transitions in the public right-of-way or from pathways of travel to our facilities. So actually not on streets and alike, but this would be in adjacent to our facilities. I've talked extensively about the success of our pavement maintenance program. I just want to conclude with our two largest projects and just give you just a really quick update. De La Guerra Plaza, during COVID, when we were meeting remotely with all the stakeholders, we had a lot of trouble getting agreement and getting this moving forward. As of last month, I'm very pleased to report we met in person and had a very successful meeting and got traction on a lot of issues that were necessary to get this moving forward. So what's going to happen next month, the pre-evaluation review team submittal will be made by Mr. Hess, who's the project manager for this, and then that'll go through its evaluation process. And then for the balance of the calendar year, so July through December, this project will go in front of HLC multiple times for all the different requirements that it needs to fulfill. Our largest project is the police station project. This project will go to Planning Commission next week for CEQA review, and then it will come before council at the end of the month, next month, for a council decision on CEQA. That all goes well. We anticipate to have 100% design development drawings by November of this year, and then hopefully by May of 2023, so a year from now, to have 100% plans and specs ready to go out for bid. A lot of things have to happen in between that time. And then if that all goes well, the anticipation is we would be looking at awarding a construction contract in November of next year. So that concludes the general fund and Measure C capital projects, and that concludes our overall brief. So now welcome your questions.
Well, thank you very much. That was an impressive run-through of a ton of slides. So we will go to council questions now. Start out with Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. It was very thorough. I just have a couple questions, and I know that you've personally gone over this with me, but I kind of just wanted to go out to the public. But when it comes to the sidewalks, how does one request a sidewalk if they live on a block that doesn't have one? Like, what's the process of that?
Yeah, I'll let Mr. Dewey provide the specific answer. And I'll go to the bottom line up front. We have a lot of requests. They're just usually where all the sidewalks that are easy to put in have been put in. The ones that aren't in are very expensive per lineal feet, very expensive. So that is the challenge against the budget, but I'll let Mr. Dewey go through the details.
Yeah, Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Gutierrez, the best way really is to submit a request through our online forms that are on the city's website. So they can just submit a request as far as sidewalk repair, and we'll be able to get it through that. There is a lot of criteria around, how we select sidewalk infill. We do perform a certain amount of sidewalk infill every year, but it becomes really challenging sometimes when we have an area that, there's been encroachments by private property owners, and sometimes there's been, some of these things require retaining walls and things like that make it excessively expensive. And then we also try to fold some of these projects into active transportation grants. And depending on the area that you're requesting it to be installed, it does not really get the kind of grant scoring that we need in order to make the project happen. So there's a lot of things that are involved with that, but the best way to do it is just to submit a sidewalk request, and we do keep a record of all of the requests that happen. And whenever we roll out an active transportation project or when we're considering our capital program, we do look at those. But there's a lot of areas in town that are, just really have a lot of challenges.
Okay, thank you for that. There was a portion of the presentation that went over bicycle storage. I've gotten a few correspondence from the public about implementing more bicycle lockers around town. Are you able to speak to that at all?
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez through the mayor. Currently, we have just recently reopened again is the bike spot at parking lot 3, which is right adjacent to the transit center. And so, we also have a long-term parking area at the Granada Garage as well. So they can go onto our website through the downtown division to get information on that. And we continually, just through our bicycle master planning efforts, look at longer-term facilities as well as short-term facilities for additional parking in our high-trafficked areas for cyclists.
So there's no plan on adding any new additional ones around town at different spots?
Not at this time. But there, if you go to our bicycle master plan, documented in the community need is certain areas around town.
Okay, thank you. And then the next is just when it comes to State Street, is there a staff person that regularly patrols State Street to keep it cleanly? Like, is there someone that just kind of walks up and down State Street to pick up trash and such?
Yes, Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez through the mayor again. For State Street, yes, that is ongoing maintenance and cleaning that is on State Street. We recently had a presentation through the State Street Master Plan Committee, and that had the sort of the day in the life of State Street. When we return to council on June 28th, we will also be going over that in more detail. But the short answer is yes, we have from daily cleaning to weekly cleaning and monthly and quarterly cleanings. Just depends on what the specific element is.
Is it possible to have that same type of attention implemented in the different business areas around the city, not just State Street?
Councilmember Gutierrez, I can probably address that in that in a perfect world, it would be extended further. Right now, with the change of operations of State Street, obviously that's been an area of focus. As we discussed, we're having real personnel challenges as far as we're not fully staffed. So areas outside the promenade, we're probably handling more on a complaint basis than we are on a regular basis, but I've charged everybody in Public Works. They're always the eyes and ears, and we have crews out around the city. So if we do see areas that are problematic, everyone is empowered to call that in, and we'll be as responsive as possible.
And Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez, I would suggest also another option is if business districts to look at creating their own funding source, such as they are doing on Coast Village Road, to implement a community benefit improvement district that can increase the level of service for that specific area because it's funded specifically for that area. State Street has a special relationship with the business community in terms of the provision of the parking lots and their support and payment of the business improvement, parking business improvement area costs in support of that. So it's sort of a mutual relationship financially there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. Ms. Grant, you're up first since you're already there. You mentioned that there's a potential, or there's this $500 million that might go into this, the ATP, and it might go into 6, but you said that it could go back into 5. What does that mean if it goes back into 5? Does it mean our previous application might get funded because we were only 1 point off, so they would just use that previous application?
Yes, Councilmember Freeman, through the mayor. It's been a sort of emotional roller coaster on the topic of augmented funds. I think when I was before you last year, there was the potential for augmented funds, and then the funds went away. And then when the new budget came out again, there was another plug number for $500 million. There is a workshop tomorrow on that, so we'll have a little bit more information. And at this point in time, yeah, those Cliff and Westside would be well positioned if it does go back into cycle 5. If not, then we did score very well and hope to receive money. So it might be more additional monies in cycle 6. That might be the case. As soon as we find out that information, we will certainly have an email out to mayor and council.
And just a clarifying question, if it by chance went back into 5, that's the application they're using, not the one we just submitted for 6?
We haven't submitted the applications yet. They're due June 15th. But that would be a discussion that we would need to have with Caltrans and the California Transportation Commission to confirm scope. For when we submitted applications 2 years ago, that was different prices, and with inflation, construction costs have increased, and so we'd have more information later on.
And then the last question on this was, if it went to the cycle 5 application, we have a significant change in the match because of the 1 point difference. Would if it went to 5, would we still have the match that we originally presented, or would we be going with the proposed in 6, which is significantly more?
The match under cycle 5 was 1%. But we expect that we would have to have more matching funds again because the prices that when we submitted in 2020 have increased, so we might need to have additional city match monies.
So either way, there's
either
probably
way,
going to be an
yes.
investment in 5 or 6. Okay. And then on, you mentioned that the fees for downtown, for State Street, for the dining on the sidewalks. But what is the status of the parklets in the road? One on coming up with the fee structure, is that coming back to us in June? And then also the issue, it came up in public comment yesterday at the council meeting on ADA issues, and how are we addressing ADA access, in particular in both, on the sidewalk, but also on the parklets themselves?
Yes, Councilmember Freeman, through the mayor. So for the potential for rent within the promenade on the street, that will be a discussion returning to council on the June 28th. We will be discussing that at the ad hoc committee level next week for that to receive some initial direction. As far as for ADA compliance on the promenade, sort of unlike the compliance with the fire lane, which I would give a grade as an A+, we do not have an outstanding grade for ADA compliance. At this point in time, we have worked very closely with the businesses. Sometimes it's a game of inches, that they're off by an inch on their table and need to modify it. Others need completely new tables or a ramp. So we are continuing to work with them over the next few months on that.
Okay, thank you. That's a major issue for all of
Yes.
us, and I appreciate the
Yes.
attention to that. So any extra resources? I know we have limited resources, Ms. Maurer, but that's a major issue. On slide 57, they had the projected fund balance for the reserves for downtown parking, and I just wanted to be sure that this is that reserve, the orange line is the proposed rate increase to 250, and then it could actually go up if there's plans for additional down the line. But I just wanted to understand that orange line is just for the $2.50.
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Friedman, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then just wanted to. That's all. I think that's all I have on that. And then. That is all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse, and I'll save my comments of appreciation for after questions. I first have some very sort of like minor questions and then some overarching big picture questions, but just for little questions. For the parking fees, could there be a local preference in rates? So different rates if you're local. I'm just thinking about, you're going to the library for a couple of hours and you're a local resident versus, someone, a tourist coming and enjoying downtown with sort of a different expectation.
Sure, Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Sneddon. There are ways, the current parking access and revenue control system, so all that equipment that raises and lowers the gates, that we have has ways of sort of whitelisting certain license plates now that we have license plate recognition. It would have to be done as sort of a permit program as opposed to just a differential rate. I don't believe that there's a way for us to charge one vehicle one rate hourly and a different vehicle a different rate hourly. I also would estimate that by exempting locals from parking rates, that we would not be meeting the revenue goals that we need to meet in order to sustain the program and our reserves. We do offer monthly parking permits in our lots, particularly for commuters that are offered at a discounted rate. You'll note that we did not raise those fees this year, so those have always been a good deal for commuters and people who come downtown frequently. They've always been a discount over what they would pay hourly if they were, down here for 40 hours a week or something like that. Those are becoming a much better deal now if there's a rate increase that goes ahead. So we continue to offer those in several of our parking lots downtown for individuals who are downtown frequently and for commuters who want to take advantage of that.
What is the rate for someone who frequents downtown?
So it depends on which lot you're parking in. Our two commuter parking lots, the Coda commuter lot and the Carrillo commuter lot, are our least expensive lots. Of course, those lots are also destined for other projects in the coming years, but the Coda commuter lot, we offer permits for $70 a month for downtown commuters. The Carrillo commuter lot, it's $40 a month, so that's really the best deal in town. In our hourly lots, at lots 2 and at the Granada Garage, we offer permits for $160 a month. We offer permits for $140 a month in the Ortega Garage, lot 10, and there's a further discount even for employees of Paseo Nuevo. And then we offer permits also down in the depot lot as well.
So I'm just trying to think of some kind of like permit or something where this is what I know happens, and this is what I want to speak to. For local residents, they'll go to Goleta Library because they don't have to pay to park, or they'll go out to Target out in Goleta because they don't have to park. And so for a local resident, I'm just trying to get to a way where, if you're every day after school going to drive and go to the library and hang out for a free activity, that I'm just speaking for myself, that paying for parking is an impediment to a local, and I think drives people who are doing repeated habitual activity downtown to just do it somewhere else. So I'm looking for some kind of way, and I don't know if there's other council support for that, but it seems like a lot to me, to $250 an hour. So for local residents who are just doing local things, not shopping, not, just using our, coming to City Hall or, the basic functions of downtown. But
Yeah, Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Sneddon, that is certainly a concern that we've heard, and it's one that we understand. It's also the reason that there continues to be a 75-minute complimentary parking period in the lots downtown. So that's the reason that that period was established, and the downtown parking system was established in order to provide the downtown businesses and other attractions with free parking to compete with those other parts of town where, like Lacumber Plaza, where you've got the large free parking lots. So that's something that we intend to preserve at this time.
okay, thank you. I'll just say that that's something I don't really want to see that rate go up. I understand and earn free fall, and maybe it's the whole structure of downtown parking and the services provided and what's being put on downtown parking to provide. That's maybe a structural question, but just I don't want to see the fees go up. Just it's so off, but what is the schedule for the Los Patos on-ramp reopening with the 101 construction, and do we have a timeline for that one? And if you want to answer that later, you can answer it later to anyone.
Councilmember Sneddon, through the mayor, if I understood the question correctly, for the Los Patos off-ramp?
On-ramp.
To
reopen the on-ramp onto the 101.
Onto Cabrillo, I don't have the exact schedule with me. Yeah, it's connected with the widening effort right now.
Okay.
We expect through, I think it's forecasted if everything's funded through 2028, as far as a construction completion date.
So sometime in there, and I can follow up with you
And then the
offline on that.
Los Patos off-ramp is scheduled to go away, but it will need to stay open for when they're widening in that section. So that's one of the last pieces that's removed on the off-ramp.
Maybe I'm saying it wrong, the on-ramp.
And then the on-ramp, at Cabrillo.
Yes.
Yes, so that's, again, it's depending upon grant funding, so it could be, again, a few years out.
Okay, thank you. And then along the lines of Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez about sidewalks, what is the process for stop signs? I mean, multiple times a year, I get requests for a stop sign at Calle Noguera and Calle Palo, Colorado. I used to live at that intersection for 7 years with young children, saw near accidents constantly. Like, what is the process to get that done?
Councilmember Sneddon, again, I refer back to our web-based forms, where you can request any kind of repair or any change in the public right-of-way. We just recommend that. Usually, we don't have any problems receiving those requests, and we get a lot of them. We do evaluate them and give people a prompt response on that. But, the web-based forms are the best way to do that.
So so beyond that, so say they've already contacted the city and they've already gotten sort of the answer, no. And if they want to start a petition or they want to get neighbor support, or there's sort of and this is a question that comes up with people about different intersections too.
Yeah, I think that, the responsibility for safety and traffic engineering really is the responsible of our principal traffic engineer. And, as putting together a petition, the way people perceive safety may be much different than the reality that exists there. And, the responsibility really relies on, a trained professional to make those decisions. And, that's where I think that we draw the line as far as the city is concerned. Maybe Mr. Maurer can expand on that.
Councilmember Sneddon, I agree with what Mr. Dewey said. Oftentimes, people see a situation and say, yes, there's confusion there, or there's near misses. The downside to putting, there are many downsides to putting controlled intersections in every direction, one of which is carbon footprint. Causing cars to stop more often, you change circulation flows, there's more noise when cars are stopping and starting. Some of the drivers who drive too quickly and are the focus of why we need a stop sign, those are the ones that when they come up to stop signs, screech to a halt and then do a jackrabbit start, screeching their tires and making all kinds of noise, and oftentimes making the intersection even more dangerous, or higher risk, I should say. So those are all considerations, but as Mr. Dewey said, our principal traffic engineer really understands the deep science and the enormous amount of research that goes into.
Which I completely support and respect traffic engineers so much, but I just want to say that what I'm hearing is, it doesn't matter what you write on the form. That's, I mean.
Councilmember Sneddon, for the purpose for stop signs, it's to establish right-of-way, and then there's a specific warrant analysis for traffic control. But there's certainly, please welcome them to contact our department so we can listen to what the concerns are in more detail, because there might be other engineering solutions.
Thank you so much. It's something I get multiple times a year. I do contact, and they get response back of the reasons why, but it's just so just to follow, I just want to know the process.
Yeah, Mayor Ross, Councilmember Sutton, I would suggest a lot of the times people have information that we don't have because it hasn't
Yes.
been provided to us. And therefore, if people are seeing repeat accidents that are not getting reported to the police and are not getting reported to the city, it's very important that they document and get those reported to us, because the basis for the need for a stop sign is based on traffic safety and whether there is a need to clarify right-of-way. And so having that factual information rather than just a perceived helps the traffic engineer decide where traffic signs really truly are warranted. And that warranted is a technical term, meaning needed for proper traffic management.
I really appreciate that, because I do want to think that there is a process that that those go somewhere, those notices. And then along those lines, partnering with neighborhood associations on speed cameras or something like that has been presented to me as a source of revenue for the city with speeding tickets, and I've had different neighborhood associations approach about if they paid for the installation, would the city be amenable to that type of partnership?
Councilmember Sneddon, are you talking about just the signs that, the radar signs, or is this connected with enforcement too?
Well, I suppose it would be connected with enforcement or with signs. I don't know. I'm asking what would be the level of support that we might.
I know that there have been requests that came in, like on Hot Springs Road, I believe, that for a radar speed sign to be installed, and we can evaluate. In a lot of cases, that's something that we really want to do. As far as the enforcement of that, I can't really speak to that, but.
I'll chime in here, Councilmember Sneddon. Just in general for our Vision Zero program and strategy, there are 23 priority corridors that we have analyzed for collision patterns. There's a couple roadways that are known for higher speed areas. The police department is very limited in their traffic enforcement, so we are very strategic that they are on the roadways where we see the patterns.
I just to follow up on that, as a source of revenue, aren't there cameras, I'm not sure what the technical name is, cameras that are speed cameras that then you can automatically issue a citation? No, I'm not talking about.
Councilmember Sneddon, I don't know the exact ruling, but previously in the state of California, speed cameras can't be used.
Okay.
They were causing more accidents than they were preventing because people see the camera, they slam on their brakes, and there'd be a chain reaction.
Okay, thank you. That answers that question. And then to the bigger picture, are there not enough engineers in the world, or are we just not paying our engineers enough?
Councilmember Snedden, that's a great question. And I think the answer is yes and yes. There's an ongoing campaign amongst the engineering community to get more students young involved in STEM. And the E in STEM is engineering. Demand for them is very high. I think what we've seen recently, which is not unique to just engineering, but that's probably where it's impacting us the most, is with a decade of stagnant wages. In the last 8 to 12 months, wages have opened up, and people who, including ours, have seen opportunities that they hadn't seen before. And the ones we're losing are losing to almost across the board to promotions, but also factors that we know here in Santa Barbara are significant, closer to home, less commute, being able, lower cost of living as to where they're at. So all those factors are contributing to where we're at right now. But, and again, it's the lead lag, lose them quickly, and it's a 5 to 6 month process to go through the selection, advertising, recruiting, selection, and then getting them on board. So all those things are really challenging us.
So it's even twofold, that the demand,
Correct.
there is a shortage, and we're losing
Yes.
who we have really excellent engineers, and we're losing them. And then you mentioned almost 30%, in some areas 20% staffing shortage. I mean, at what point are we at critical level of not able to deliver basic services?
We're not at critical level right now, but we've certainly identified some areas. Our hourly staff, I would say that's critical. We're at 70%. That will be in some respects resolved on July 1, because people that want to work that can't, because they're up against the 1,000-hour limit, will be able to come back to the workforce, so that we will see that number come down significantly. But structurally, it'll still be a problem unless we can hire more hourly so that we can distribute their hours across 12 months instead of 9 and end up short for the last 3 months of the fiscal year. The biggest area, as both Ms. Hsu and Mr. Hagmart mentioned, is our water resources engineers. We just, unfortunately, confluence of a couple departures right on top of each other, and we have some, that, as Mr. Hagmart said, we in this budget proposal have requested 2 additional senior engineers in that area, because with full staffing, we couldn't meet our capital projects for the enterprise fund, and now we've lost some, so we're really down. I wouldn't say it's critical as far as delivering our services today. We can do that, but positioning ourselves to have the capital improvements that need to happen specifically at El Estero, we need those engineers, so we are working hard to recruit those.
So, and are those positions being offered at a higher salary, or what makes us think we'll be able to fill them if we couldn't keep them?
Well, the 2 additional positions in this budget are at a higher level. So hopefully that will attract higher levels. The other 2, I think, kind of fall in this just a higher level of transition right now in the engineering and professional community writ large. And so those, I'm confident we'll be able to get good people higher in there, but it's just the lag time is very disruptive to our program.
And could you just, last question, could you just talk about the impacts of reclassification? I mean, if we're so understaffed and then someone takes on more responsibility, do they have the staff that they need to be supporting the position that they vacated and the new one of the responsibilities they're taking on? Because it seems to me there's a combination of 2 to 3 positions that are now being done by overworked people in pandemic times.
Correct. Councilmember Sneddon, you're correct. It's a challenge. As you know, the city is going to undertake a class of comp study, and it's overdue. That will give us some real clarity as to how we're doing against the marketplace, South Coast and California and all, because we recruit from outside just this area as well. There are areas, and mostly in our professional positions, where people are stressed. They are overworked, they're covering down. It's true across the city, specifically in Public Works, very can-do people do not want to let their team down, their section, division, department, the city down, but very mindful it's not sustainable. So we're paying close attention to that, a lot of discussion on how to remedy those issues.
And that's all the way to the ambassador. I mean, to hear, I mean, something that matters and that all of these things matter that we're invested in, and we can't deliver the level of service that I know that you are known for.
Well, I would say we're delivering that level of service, but it's at in some area now with the ambassadors. You're right. You can't have 5 people when you have 18 and deliver the same amount. It's not possible. But across the board, we're doing it, but we're doing it in a way that's not sustainable. So that's why we have to fix it.
Thank you.
Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple tangent questions. I'm sure they're going to be all over, so I'll just go through these real quick. And if you want to chat about these sometime later, just tell me so. Okay. If we had a waterfront shuttle now, that'd be somewhere in your guys' department, right?
Councilmember Jordan, through the mayor, there had been funding for a downtown and waterfront shuttle. Currently, there isn't a budget for it, but it had been a prior line item.
So I'm hearing chatter about the need to, well, both ways. But the first one I want to talk about is back and forth between Fess Parkers and the harbor, just circling the fountain. What would be the proper time? And the reason I'm hearing that is I'm hearing, quote unquote, stranded visitors at the east and west ends of the city with a need to get from lodging back to the center of the city. And of course, we'd like them to get, I think, to the base of State Street. So what would be the best method, time, and place to talk about that?
Councilmember Jordan, for the first comment that you had for the waterfront specific area, that would hit in the waterfront department budget. But as far as for long-term and looking at transit, I expect a lot of that to come out of the State Street master planning effort as we relook at all of the circulation, and I think it will come through those discussions as well.
And if one thinks that the need is sooner than a 2, 5, 10, 20-year master plan project, what would be the avenue to discuss that?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Jordan, the MTD is currently looking at service needs for transit, and so they would be an appropriate place to direct people who believe there's a need for that transit service as well.
And then same question for what I would call a mini shuttle going up and down state. I'm envisioning it as like an 8-person golf course kind of thing. MTD be the proper place, you think, to start that discussion?
I think MTD currently or previously was serving at State Street with an enlarged mini bus. They don't have that type of thing. I don't know that they would be able to build that into their services. We can talk about potential opportunities for providing that kind of service, and probably best done offline. I don't know whether there's an opportunity for a private service provision if it's needed.
Okay. let me check in, I can check in with Dave Davis and just start at the top with them. And then, Mr. Maurer, on that slide on Measure C capital with $19 million comfortably going to streets, when you look out, it's 131. When you look out over the, when you get into funding implementation for both De La Guerra Plaza and the police department, is the natural erosion of that graph there going to be streets? When you have to start pulling money for the financing or however you do the police department?
Councilmember Jordan, I'm going to take that one too. Council several years ago, and we will be coming back to you before too long with an updated resolution, but you set the priorities for Measure C with two top priorities being the police station and streets funding. And then other priorities as well, but those made it clear that those were the two top priorities. So with that current direction, we will continue to prioritize the police station funding and the street funding, and then we will get to other types of needs as we can with whatever funding is left over. Depending on how a police station budget comes in, we may or may not have sufficient money to fully fund the street maintenance. But my guess, and I would defer to Mr. Dewey, is that we would continue to prioritize street paving, because the paving piece is the piece where when you start down that slippery slope, the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets, you know, and not just incrementally, significantly.
So I guess I have no clue on what when the police stations is up and in the budget as a line item, what is the annual expense to the police station funding mechanism projected?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Jordan, I'll be happy to answer that question for you. We are approximating around a $5 million annual debt service payment for 30 years to pay for the police facility debt issuance. So with that, with a continued investment in streets of around $19 million, we will have adequate resources to continue to fund streets at the current level.
Okay, thanks. Much less than I anticipated. Then, in the downtown parking area, a couple of discussions I've heard in regards to next year's budget and some year-to-year concerns has been one of the exclusions in the zone of benefits. And it has to do with the live theaters exclusion. I know you heard this just last month, and I know it comes up every year. And so the way I literally understand that without being the subject matter expert is live theaters get an exclusion, but at the same time, when they're in session, they are a significant load on the on a parking structure, parking facility for the free period, but they're not contributing to the free period. So what would be the best method or time to elevate that discussion to see if something needs to be done from council's standpoint?
Yes, Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Jordan. I believe what you're referring to is the parking and business improvement area assessment, and you're correct that by that adopted assessment methodology, the live theaters are excluded from having to pay in, and that has been something that has come up recurrently, including recently, most recently at the Downtown Parking Committee meeting this month. So the time to address that would be through the PBIA assessment process. At this point, we are preparing to come to you, I believe, next week or the week following, with the intent to levy for that assessment for status quo for the next year. So at this point, it would probably be too late to address that for the coming year, but for the following year, that's something that we could consider making a change to.
Okay, and I have that description right there. I mean, there's no argument with that, right? They're not contributing. They're getting the benefit of 90 minutes free. And the people that are contributing, in some occasions where it's a really busy theater night, their customers are not even able to get into a parking facility to take advantage of that free 90 minutes, right?
Councilmember Jordan, yes, essentially. So there are, the assessment methodology for the parking and business improvement area applies sort of different rate structures to different types of business based, presumably on the level of impact that they would have on the parking facility and the amount of benefit that they would receive. So when you have an entity that's not paying into that assessment, but that is heavily utilizing the facilities, then yes, it does certainly impact the capacity of those facilities to serve other uses.
Okay. And then I think I have both of you right there for my next couple questions, and that has to do with janitorial on State Street and ambassadors on State Street. And I know the quote line in your budget is there's going to be an expanded plaza maintenance program, but I guess I'm interested in what that actually means. My impression right now is that we have little coverage related to peak use times, that we tend to staff the street during daytime working times, like 8 to 5, and so on Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, particularly what you'd call the weekend heavy use times, there's not anybody working into the night. And I know from experience on doing cleanup group work on early Saturday mornings, I'm at 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm beating any cleanup efforts out onto the street at 10 o'clock in the morning too. So, and then same type of conversation with ambassadors, which I know we're having trouble just getting them, but I don't really see any ambassadors into the evenings either on the busy evenings. So again, the Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. So when is the best time or method to get more information on those and actually try and play with your budget?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Jordan. So regarding the plaza maintenance or the promenade maintenance, so we are looking at increasing those services for the coming year. For janitorial, that would mean currently our janitorial service agreements were entered into before the promenade existed. So, they're obviously not in step with the level of service that's required right now. So we'd be looking at essentially doubling that support. And adding support for cleaning in the street itself, as opposed to right now when they're just on the sidewalks. For power washing, we're looking to go to once a week schedule as opposed to once a month, which is where we're currently at. And we're also looking at staffing up in terms of our hourly maintenance staff to add, for particularly those shoulder times that you were just describing, where our contractors usually start early in the morning, and so they're sort of on the morning shift, particularly on the weekdays, but adding hourly maintenance staff who can support more on the weekends and further into the evening. So that is ongoing, but we'll be having further discussions about that at the June 28th ad hoc committee, council meeting regarding that.
Before June 8th, could you provide me some details on what exactly that looks like?
Certainly, yes, we can
Days
do that.
and the times and the coverage for that type of stuff. So, because I don't want to get in another discussion like this prior subject that I just missed my one-year opportunity to try and find you some more funds to do this at a time that I'm hearing that we need it, rather than just a time that you guys are assuming is when we need it.
Certainly, Councilmember Jordan, we have already developed revised scopes of work for the coming year. We're currently working with our vendors on getting updated costs for that, and we can get that information to you.
Okay, super. And then same information, I guess, on ambassadors, when they work, how much time, when are they not working, that kind of thing.
Certainly.
And then our graffiti service, another discussion point I've heard with the business community too, and I think we talked about it up here a few weeks ago too, would be the option of a private property owner subscribing and paying a fee to the city to be able to avail themselves of our people doing their graffiti removal, because we're already set up with a roving asset and techniques that work, rather than them have to scramble and go buy a gallon of paint and find some poor guy to paint it over. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that and what that looks like within the capabilities of the assets we have.
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Jordan, we've also heard that suggestion. It's something that we're looking into.
And is a timeline on that before we put the budget to bed, or would it be after?
Councilmember Jordan, at this point, I don't believe that it would be before the budget was adopted, but like I said.
So in theory, if we did full cost recovery on that and we had the asset available, it really wouldn't be a budget issue, right?
Right, we would be looking, if we were to develop any sort of program along those lines, we'd be looking at making it full cost recovery with those subscription fees.
Okay, and then I think I'm going to get Mr. Dewey up, maybe. Similar to Ms. Sneddon, I get them too. I'll give you the poster child is West Valerio, coming downhill on West Valerio. Once you come off to the west side and you're taking the shortcut over to the Mesa. And similar, I get the same answers. You can't just put a stop sign anywhere. You can't just put a, and then when you find a light pole with power, that power is not the right kind of power to run one of the darn solar things, and you find out way too many details. But I was introduced by somebody on the Mesa who talked, because he asked the question and talked about the intersection of Flora Vista and Cliff Drive, and where we had an existing signal, but they were having a recurring problem where all the signals changed, so red on Cliff Drive, green on Flora Vista, and maybe not even Mesa Lane, because that's all goobered up. But they would take 3 steps out into the intersection, and the car would already be on them. And there's a term for this, which I forget, but I just call it the early starting walk signal before the signal actually changes green for the cars. And that seemed to be a relatively easy fix, and is that a relatively easy fix everywhere? And do we do routine assessments on that based on pedestrian flows at high volumes signals and work on remodeling them?
Councilmember Jordan, through the mayor, let's start on Valerio. That is a street that has upcoming pavement maintenance. There have been speed humps on there, but over the years have been worn down. And so when we go in and do that work, we will modify the speed humps again for that particular roadway. With respect to traffic signals, the term is LPI, lead pedestrian interval. That is something that we do evaluate, and we do have that at intersections where we've had collision patterns. An example of that would be Mitchell-Torina in San Andres has a lead protection, as well as when I showed the Vision Zero State Street undercrossing project, that was, we have a high collision pattern there for vehicle versus ped and vehicle versus cyclist, and we do have LPI at that intersection. So again, that's something that we can evaluate.
But can it be done anywhere? I mean, I got the feeling from Mr. Bailey that, we just go out and we do something for a couple $1,000s and the intersection's fixed. Is that kind of true, or?
Well, actually, at the state level right now for legislation, they're looking at that statewide to look at lead protection intervals for all intersections. There's a longer answer to that Mr. Bailey would be much better to respond than me. But again, it's just evaluation and signal timing and all of that. But we're happy to follow up if there's, those specific examples.
Then I suspect you're going to tell me to go talk to Parks and Rec, but as a frequent weasel myself, I use Louise Lowry, of course, after 5 p.m. every chance I can when I'm in that part of downtown. And I'm just wondering, that's still on a busy whatever night in that area, in the theater arts area and the restaurant area, is a completely full parking lot to the detriment of our parking lot, which is right across the street, and nobody's paying to use that completely full parking lot. I'm just wondering, what are we doing, or is it you guys that don't really have purview over it, and it's Parks and Rec, and how do we get to an imaginative point where we take care of that missed revenue and direct people to our parking lot and stop that?
Mayor, as Councilmember Jordan, I would actually ask the city attorney to give you a response on that, because the challenge is that that is designated as a park, as part of a park and serving a park function, so it restricts the uses that are there. And Mr. Kalan, I don't know if you have anything
So
else.
let me say, no, thank you. I'll get with him offline because it's not a budget deal then. That's all I have. Yep, thank you.
All right, very good. I have a couple quick questions for, well, one for Ms. Clark regarding the downtown parking reserves and whatnot. As you stated reserves up there, did that include the ARPA funds that we dedicated from that last tranche into the, were those represented on your graph?
Mayor Rouse, yes, it is. It does
It
include
is,
that.
so that
Yes.
includes that?
Yes.
Because we backfilled reserves and still. All right. Very interesting. All right, very good. And in terms of the sidewalk dining fees that we're talking about reinstating, and this is probably Ms. Grant, I assume, are we talking about the same model, or is that under discussion with the model we're going to use in terms of assessment?
Mayor Rouse, that is under discussion that will be going before you on June 28th.
Okay, thank you. And the last question I had was about the radio communications issue that came up. Mentioned a couple of budget numbers, $2 million and $10 million in terms of the implementation of doing so. Does that take into account the coordinated upcoming fire dispatch? Is that part of that, or is that separate from that? And can you tell me exactly what that program is? Maybe I can turn your mic on, you can do that. There we go.
Okay, thank you, Mayor House and members of the council. Yes, that includes coordination efforts with the county and the co-location of the dispatch functions between fire and the county fire. It also includes coverage of all of the equipment infrastructure required to upgrade our current system to a digital system that specifically really supports a lot of police and fire encryption functions, but then also supports fire and public works.
And will we be making that investment into dispatch prior to the construction of the new police station, or will we do it as status quo?
This is a separate project from the dispatch station. This is the
Okay.
support functions that include all of our radio sites, microwave sites, and all of the technology to support the linkages. This includes linkages at the airport and fire at airport, and then also on the waterfront.
Okay, thank you very much. We will go now to comments. And I'm going to ask everybody to be mindful of the time budget, because we do have to all be somewhere. And we'll start with Mr. Friedman.
Mayor Rouse, you do have one member of the public who would like to make a
Oh,
public
I'm
comment.
sorry, thank you for reminding me. And that would be Ms. Kovacs.
That is Robin Elander on Zoom. And Ms. Elander, you can unmute yourself and speak.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Mayor, City Council, and staff, my name is Robin Elander, and I have the honor and privilege to serve as the Executive Director for the Downtown Organization, which supports and promotes over 1,400 businesses downtown. I want to thank you on behalf of the Downtown Organization for your support and collaboration and leadership over these past several years. Together, we have been able to support our downtown business community in collaboration with the public works staff and others to get through the severe challenges of the pandemic with innovative and future-oriented mindset. We have proactively marketed and promoted businesses and leveraged the resources of area partners to get the businesses the resources they need. Your continued support will help us to further past year's accomplishments and help our downtown business district to continue to bounce back and thrive into the future. Our plans for fiscal year 2022 and 2023 continue many of the services we have been doing for the past year, plus new activations and events highlighting our diverse and unique neighborhoods downtown, with the goal of attracting locals and visitors to return time and time again to the heart of our community. I look forward to our continued partnership with Public Works and other city staff and continue working collaboratively to support the needs of our downtown business community and our thriving, lively business center. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, back to the council for, that's the last public speaker, is it not? Thank you. Back to council for comment, Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. I will be brief. I just want to thank all of our staff. A great presentation in terms of everything that you do. It's a diverse department. And a lot of this I'll be following up, some of you in the department, but also Mr. DiMartini on some items today that we can put into the finance committee and the finance work. We're looking at the different departments. In particular, I'm interested in the key level positions, how we can address that structurally, in particular engineering. That's what I'm hearing taken away from today's meeting. And with that, I just again want to thank all of you. And I got called out by the community development staff, so I'm going to ask you, get the hats, get the shirts, and I got one ready for me. So thank you, and hopefully we can have library, parks, and every department have something, and we can all take turns up here wearing them. Thanks.
Thank you for the fashion statement. Okay, Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you. Well, I'll second that. I want some Public Works merch. Let's get that going. So it's always uncomfortable that we have the questions first and the comments after, but my comments are, wow, what you are able to accomplish and been able to accomplish in pandemic times. You never shut down. You kept the city running. It's really incredible, and it's so many of the things that we take for granted, you know, that we turn our taps on and water comes out, that we flush our toilets and the waste goes away. I mean, these seem like simple things that I'm not sure people understand, like how much goes into that, including Ellis Darrow electrical upgrades and all that goes into that. The desal link project, you know, mainly we hear complaints about construction, but what people don't understand yet is what that's going to mean for water quality and for reliability, and then those will be coordinated and repaved, and people will forget it was ever dug up, and that's all thanks to you, that keeping that going. I want to call out the water projects that we're even able to have, such as safe and reliable water supply in extended drought and now recurring drought, is really remarkable, and that we're in a good shape because of that diversified water portfolio is really commendable. There's a small slide in here, but that environmental compliance slide, that, you know, all these projects that were completed and all that goes into each of those projects, and it's, you know, one slide with some bullet points, but those are major projects for the safety and benefit of the community. Also, cleaning streets, what's happening with Mission Canyon moving forward, De La Guerra Plaza planning, those are major efforts, and the State Street Promenade, that through all that, through closures, to be able to make that promenade and to be constantly adapting and updating and responding to the needs of the business community, the larger community, to us and our preferences up here, and coordinating all of that has been really commendable. I am very concerned about the staffing level. While it's, you know, getting the work done in this time, it is not sustainable. We're having staff that are reclassified, don't have the staff to support them, then we're not having the salaries to bring in staff to support or to lead, frankly, and we've lost some really, really good people, as I'm sure you're painfully aware, and I think we feel that loss. And while you're filling that void, it is at a cost and toll that I don't think can go on like this. These are critical infrastructure services that are provided to the community that, as I said, the community takes for granted, and I don't think has seen the decrease in the level of service and responsiveness, but I'm very concerned about the staff level burnout and ability to keep that up, and I don't think that you should. That's part of it too. I don't think it's on us to keep asking you to do that in a sustained way. I mean, you made it very clear that delayed project delivery, delayed response, reduction in customer service, loss of support to complete major work efforts, and not having enough engineers to support infrastructure work. I mean, this is basic public safety, basic work of civic government. So I'm seeing this as a crisis. These are functions that have to happen. I'm just going to say up here, we need to raise salaries, and we need to do a structural look to what we can keep the excellent workforce we have, particularly in public works. I mean, what you're saying, I mean, I think that was a conservative estimate of how long it takes to onboard someone to be the really high level of expertise that we have in public works. I mean, I would say it was at least a year or multiple years, and we're losing people who have been with us for multiple years. So I don't know where that structural change happens, but it's not sustainable. And though I commend you for doing what you need to do to make the budget match what we say we need, that the staffing level is something on a bigger picture we have to fix, and that's on us.
All right, thank you. Okay, great presentation, a lot of information. Yeah, staffing was the common thread and theme. It's certainly not unique to Public Works. It's not unique to public safety. It's not even unique to the private sector. So it's a problem nationwide over all industries, and a lot of it is hard to figure out. So I appreciate that the efforts have gone forward to find efficiencies that you have. And I do appreciate our current staff for doing wearing more than one hat in many circumstances. So what the solution is still a little elusive because we're not sure we really understand what the issue is at this point in time across the entire set of industries in the United States. And that will do it. I would like to adjourn in recognition of the tragedy in Texas. That's all I got to say. Thank you.